into understanding. The darkness was not only frightening, it was also mysterious. And mystery attracts humans. We are drawn toward questions. What is beyond? What happens after death? What controls nature? Why are we here? The first sacred spaces were created because humans asked these questions. And caves were the perfect environment for those questions. They were isolated, silent, powerful, ancient, a place where humans could feel close to something greater. But as humans left caves and built settlements, the idea of sacred space evolved. The cave became the temple. The underground chamber became the sanctuary. The ritual gathering became organized religion. The same human desire remained, to create a connection between the visible world and the invisible one. Thousands of years later, the greatest temples on earth would follow similar principles. They used darkness, light, sound, architecture, symbolism, all designed to create a feeling of entering another reality. The ancient cave was humanity's first cathedral, not because it had walls of stone carved by builders, but because humans gave it meaning. They transformed a natural place into something sacred. And perhaps that was one of humanity's first great creations. Not a tool, not a weapon, not a city, but a place where the human mind could reach beyond itself. A place where people could ask the oldest question of all: what exists beyond what we can see? The answer may still be hidden in the darkness of those ancient caves. For thousands of years, humans have looked toward the sky and wondered if something greater was watching from above. The stars appeared endless. The sun controlled life. The moon controlled the rhythms of darkness. The heavens seemed distant, powerful, and impossible to reach. And from this mystery came one of the most influential ideas in human history: the belief that the sky was not empty, that something existed beyond the world of humans. The first sky gods may have been born from one simple observation. The heavens controlled everything. Rain came from above. Lightning came from above. Light came from above. The movement of the sun determined the seasons. The stars helped humans navigate across unknown lands. The sky was not just a background. It was the great force above all things. To ancient humans, the heavens were alive. And this idea transformed religion forever. Before humans created temples, they looked upward. Before priests studied sacred texts, people watched the movements of the sun and stars. The sky became the first great mystery, and perhaps the first place humans searched for gods. The connection between heaven and divinity appears in some of the oldest civilizations. In Mesopotamia, the sky god Anu was one of the most important divine beings. He represented the heavens, the highest authority, the place from which cosmic order came. Anu was not simply a god who lived in the sky. He represented the sky itself. The Egyptians also connected the heavens with powerful divine forces. The goddess Nut was believed to stretch across the sky, protecting the earth below. Every evening the sun entered her body. Every morning it was reborn. The sky itself became part of the story of creation. The universe was not just a machine. It was alive. It had personality. It had relationships. It had meaning. This way of thinking shaped how ancient people understood existence. The natural world was not separate from the spiritual world. They were connected. The sun was not just a burning object. It was a life-giving force. And life-giving forces often became gods. The sun appears as a central figure in many ancient religions. The reason is obvious. Without the sun, nothing survives. Plants die. Animals disappear. Humans cannot exist. The daily return of the sun seemed almost miraculous. Every night, darkness took over. Every morning, light returned. To ancient people, this was a cosmic battle. The sun defeated darkness again and again. This created powerful myths of death and rebirth. The Egyptian sun god Ra traveled through the sky during the day. At night, he entered the dangerous underworld. There, he fought enemies of creation. Then, he returned. A new day began. The same pattern appeared elsewhere. The sun disappeared. The sun returned. The world continued. This cycle became one of the deepest symbols in ancient religion. Death was not always the end. Darkness could be followed by light. The sky also gave humans another mystery: the stars. Every night, thousands of points of light appeared above. They moved slowly. They formed patterns. They seemed permanent. Ancient humans noticed these patterns and created stories around them. The stars became gods, heroes, animals, spirits. The night sky became a giant storybook. Different civilizations connected different meanings to the same stars. The Greeks saw constellations connected to myths. The Egyptians aligned monuments with celestial movements. The Maya studied the sky with incredible precision. Across the world, humans looked upward and searched for order. The stars became evidence that the universe followed a pattern. And if the universe had order, perhaps something created that order. This idea became central to many religions. A universe this vast and organized must have a purpose. But the sky was not only beautiful, it was terrifying. Storms, lightning, thunder. These were among the most frightening experiences ancient humans witnessed. A flash of light crossed the sky. A sound louder than anything humans could create shook the earth. Without scientific explanations, storms appeared supernatural. The storm god became one of the most powerful figures in many religions. In Mesopotamia, storm gods controlled rain and destruction. In ancient Greece, Zeus controlled thunder. In Norse mythology, Thor carried the power of storms. Different names, similar idea. The sky had power, and humans respected power. But there was another reason sky gods became so important. The sky represented distance. A mountain could be climbed. A river could be crossed. But the heavens remained unreachable. This created a sense of mystery. The gods were above. Humans were below. The separation between heaven and earth became a powerful religious symbol. Many cultures imagined gods living in the sky, a divine realm above the human world, a place of perfection. This idea influenced countless religions. But perhaps the most fascinating connection between humans and the sky was the calendar. Ancient people depended on understanding time, when to plant crops, when to harvest, when animals migrated. The movements of the sun and stars revealed the seasons. Astronomy became connected with survival, and survival became connected with religion. Priests became observers of the heavens. They studied celestial patterns. They predicted events. Their knowledge gave them authority. The sky became not only sacred, it became a source of power. The person who understood the heavens could influence society. This is why many ancient monuments were built with astronomical connections. They were not just buildings. They were attempts to connect earth and sky, humanity creating a bridge between two worlds. But perhaps the deepest question is this: why did humans always look upward? Why did the sky inspire such powerful beliefs? Maybe because humans are naturally drawn to what they cannot reach. The unknown creates curiosity. The unreachable creates imagination. The endless sky reflects something inside the human mind, a desire to understand, a desire to find meaning. The first sky gods were not only explanations for natural events, they were reflections of humanity's search for something greater. a force beyond ordinary life, a presence beyond the limits of human experience. Thousands of years later, we still do the same thing. We look at the stars. We wonder about the universe. We ask where everything came from. The questions have changed slightly, but the mystery remains. Ancient humans looked at the heavens and saw gods. Modern humans look at the same sky and search for answers. Different methods, different languages, but the same human desire: to understand the unknown above us, to find our place in a universe that seems almost infinite. And perhaps that is the true origin of the sky gods, not only in the stars, but in the human need to look beyond ourselves. For thousands of years, humans have been fascinated by one of the greatest mysteries of existence: death. Every creature on Earth experiences the end of life. But humans are different. We do not simply observe death. We question it. We wonder what happens after the final breath. Where does the person go? Does consciousness disappear? Does something continue? These questions may be among the oldest religious questions ever asked. And the search for answers may have shaped the very beginning of belief itself. Long before humans built temples or created written scriptures, they were already treating the dead in special ways. They buried bodies. They placed objects beside them. They performed ceremonies. They returned to the graves of those who had passed away. These actions suggest something powerful. Early humans may have believed death was not the end. The dead were still important. Maybe they were still present. Maybe they still had a connection to the living world. This idea transformed human history. Because once humans began thinking about life after death, they created one of the deepest foundations of religion: the belief in another world beyond this one. The earliest known burials are extremely old. Some date back tens of thousands of years. Inside these ancient graves, archaeologists have discovered surprising evidence. Bodies carefully positioned, red pigments placed on remains, tools, jewelry, animal bones, objects that seem deliberately chosen. These were not random actions. Someone made decisions. Someone thought about the dead person. Someone believed the burial mattered. Imagine a prehistoric community standing around a grave. They are not simply removing a body. They are saying goodbye. They are performing a ceremony. They are acknowledging that the person who was there yesterday is no longer there today. But what does that mean? This moment may have created one of humanity's first spiritual questions. Where did they go? The body remains, but something is missing. The person, the personality, the memories, the voice. The ancient mind may have separated these things: the physical body and something invisible, something that continued. This idea eventually became what many cultures called the soul, a hidden essence of a person, a spirit, a life force. The concept appears in countless religions around the world. Different names, different explanations, but the same mystery. The dead seemed gone, yet humans felt they were not completely gone. One of the most fascinating discoveries connected to ancient burial practices comes from the Neanderthals. For many years, people assumed Neanderthals were simple creatures, primitive, almost unlike modern humans. But archaeological discoveries changed that view. Some Neanderthal sites show evidence of deliberate burial, bodies placed carefully, graves created intentionally, possible signs of ritual. If true, this means another human species was already thinking deeply about death. The idea of spirituality may be older than our own species. It may have existed before modern civilization, before cities, before writing, before organized religion. The dead may have been the first spiritual mystery. Ancient humans lived surrounded by death. Animals died. Family members died. Children died. Life was fragile. And every death forced people to confront something they could not explain. The body was there, but the person was gone. This gap between body and identity may have inspired some of humanity's earliest beliefs. Many ancient religions developed complex ideas about the afterlife. The Egyptians created one of the most detailed systems ever imagined. For them, death was not the end. It was a transformation. The soul traveled to another existence. But reaching that world required preparation. The body needed preservation. The dead needed offerings. The correct rituals needed to be performed. A person's journey after death depended on balance and order. The famous weighing of the heart ceremony represented this idea. The heart of the dead was compared against the feather of Ma'at. If the person lived a balanced life, they could continue. If not, their journey ended. The Egyptians believed morality was connected to the afterlife. How you lived affected what happened after death. A powerful idea, one that influenced later religions. Mesopotamian beliefs were different. Their underworld was often described as a dark, quiet place. The dead existed there, but not in a paradise of rewards. This shows something important. Different cultures imagined different afterlives. But almost all were trying to answer the same question. What happens when we die? Ancient Greece also explored this mystery. The dead were believed to enter the underworld ruled by Hades. The journey required crossing boundaries between life and death. Stories described rivers, judges, shadows, heroes. These myths transformed death into a journey, a passage, a transition. And this idea appears again and again. Death is not simply an ending. It is a doorway, a transformation, a movement into another state. Why did humans develop this idea so often? One reason may be psychological. Humans are aware of their own mortality. We know we will die. This knowledge creates a unique challenge. How do you live knowing your existence is temporary? Religion offered possible answers. It gave death meaning. It created hope. It connected individuals to something larger. Another reason may be social. Remembering the dead strengthens communities. Ancestors become part of identity. A family is not only the people alive today, it includes those who came before. This is why ancestor worship became so important in many societies. The dead became guardians, sources of wisdom, links between generations. In ancient China, honoring ancestors became a central tradition. Families performed rituals. They offered food. They remembered those who had passed away. The relationship between living and dead continued. The dead were not forgotten. They remained part of the family. This idea reveals something profound about human nature. We do not only survive biologically, we survive through memory, stories, traditions. The people who came before us shape who we become. Perhaps the earliest religions were not only about gods, they were about relationships between humans and nature, between humans and ancestors, between life and death. The first spiritual question may not have been, who created the universe? It may have been, where did they go? The person who sat beside me yesterday, the person whose voice I remember, the person whose presence is gone. That question may have been powerful enough to change human history, because from that question came rituals, burials, beliefs, stories, and eventually entire religions. The mystery of death became one of humanity's greatest sources of imagination. And even today, thousands of years later, the question remains. What happens after the final moment? No civilization has ever stopped asking. Because death is not only the end of life, it is the beginning of one of the oldest mysteries humans have ever faced. For thousands of years, humans have searched for hidden worlds beyond ordinary reality. a place where spirits could be seen, a place where gods could be contacted, a place where the boundaries between humans and the unknown became thinner. Across almost every ancient civilization, one figure appears again and again. The person who claimed to walk between worlds, the healer, the prophet, the guide, the spiritual expert, the shaman. Long before organized temples and powerful priesthoods existed, humans may have turned to individuals who believed they could communicate with forces beyond the physical world. And these figures may represent one of the oldest forms of religious leadership in human history. The origins of shamanism are extremely ancient. So ancient that researchers debate exactly when it began. Some believe it may go back tens of thousands of years, perhaps even to the earliest hunter-gatherer societies. The evidence is difficult to interpret because ancient shamans left behind no books, no written instructions, no official teachings. Instead, researchers study clues, cave paintings, burial practices, ritual objects, and traditions that survived in some cultures into modern times. But the idea behind shamanism appears surprisingly universal. The belief that the visible world is connected to an invisible world, that spirits exist around humans, that certain individuals can communicate with them, and that illness, misfortune, and natural events may have deeper causes. To ancient humans, the world was full of mysteries. Why did someone become sick? Why did animals disappear? Why did storms arrive? Why did dreams feel so real? A shaman offered answers. They became interpreters of the unknown. Imagine an ancient community thousands of years ago. A hunter returns injured. A child becomes sick. The weather changes unexpectedly. The group gathers around the fire. The shaman enters. They prepare through rituals. They use music, movement, chanting, symbolic objects. The community watches as the shaman attempts to enter a different state of awareness, a state where they believe they can reach the spirit world. This was not simply entertainment. For the community, it was a serious spiritual event. The shaman was entering a place others could not reach, a hidden realm, a world beyond ordinary human experience. One of the most important parts of shamanic practice is altered consciousness. Many traditions describe entering a trance state. This could happen through repetitive sounds, dancing, isolation, fasting, meditation, or other techniques. The human brain is powerful. Rhythm and repetition can dramatically affect perception. A constant beat, a repeated movement, a focused state. These can create intense experiences. Ancient people interpreted these experiences spiritually. They believed the mind had traveled beyond the body. The shaman had crossed a boundary. They had entered another world. This idea appears in many traditions. The journey of the soul, the flight of the spirit, the meeting with ancestors, the encounter with animal guides. These themes repeat across continents. And this is what makes shamanism so fascinating. Different cultures developed similar ideas without direct contact. A spiritual specialist, a journey, a connection with unseen forces. Why did this happen? Perhaps because humans everywhere share similar experiences. Dreams, visions, the feeling of being connected to something larger, the fear of the unknown, the desire to heal. All of these are universal human experiences. Animals also played an important role in shamanic beliefs. Many traditions describe spirit animals, powerful beings that guide or protect humans. This may connect back to ancient hunting societies. Humans depended on animals for survival. They respected them, observed them, learned from them. Animals seemed mysterious. A wolf could survive in harsh conditions. A bird could travel across enormous distances. A bear had incredible strength. To ancient humans, animals possessed qualities humans admired, so they became spiritual symbols. The shaman might seek guidance from these animal spirits: the eagle, the wolf, the bear, the snake. Each represented different powers: vision, strength, transformation, knowledge. This connection between humans and animals appears in some of the oldest religious imagery ever discovered. The mysterious human-animal figures carved and painted by prehistoric people may represent early spiritual ideas. The boundary between human and animal was not always clear. The shaman could transform, not physically, but spiritually. They could enter the world of animals, the world of spirits, the world of mystery. But shamanism was not only about communication with spirits, it was also about healing. Many ancient societies believed sickness was connected to spiritual imbalance. A person became ill because something had disturbed the natural order. The shaman's role was to restore balance through rituals, through ceremonies, through symbolic actions. Modern medicine explains illness differently, but the human desire to heal has always existed, and the shaman was often the community's healer. Their role was not limited to religion. They could also be counselors, storytellers, teachers, leaders. They preserved knowledge. They remembered traditions. They connected generations. In many ways, shamans were among the earliest specialists in human society. Before doctors, before philosophers, before priests, there were people who studied the mysteries of existence. However, as civilizations grew, shamanic roles began changing. Large societies needed organization. Temples appeared. Priesthoods developed. Religious systems became more structured. The personal experience of the shaman was sometimes replaced by official ceremonies. The gods gained names. The rituals gained rules. Religion became an institution. But the influence of shamanism never disappeared. Many later religions contain ideas that may have ancient roots: visions, prophecies, sacred journeys, dream messages, spiritual transformations. The idea of a person connecting with another reality remains powerful. Even today, humans continue searching for experiences that feel beyond ordinary life. We look for meaning, connection, understanding. The ancient shaman may have been humanity's first attempt to answer one of the deepest questions: is there more to existence than what we can see? Thousands of years ago, a person sat beside a fire and stared into the darkness. They heard the wind. They watched the stars. They felt the presence of something unknown. And they wondered, maybe the universe is alive. Maybe we are connected to something greater. Maybe the world has hidden layers waiting to be discovered. That moment of curiosity may have been one of the first sparks of religion. The shaman was not just a spiritual figure. They were a symbol of humanity's endless search. A search that began in the darkness of ancient caves and continues today. For thousands of years, humans have looked for signs hidden in the world around them. A strange dream, the movement of birds, the shape of clouds, the pattern of stars. A sudden event that seemed impossible to explain. To ancient people, these things were not random. They were messages, warnings, clues from forces beyond human understanding. And from this belief came one of the most fascinating developments in the history of religion: the search for divine signs. The belief that the universe was not silent, that nature itself could communicate, that the gods, spirits, or unseen forces could reveal their intentions through symbols. This idea shaped some of the greatest civilizations on Earth. Because once humans believed the universe could send messages, they created entire systems to interpret them. The future became something that could be studied. The unknown became something that could be questioned. And the people who claimed to understand these signs gained enormous power. They became priests, prophets, seers, diviners, the interpreters of destiny. One of the oldest examples of this practice comes from ancient Mesopotamia, a civilization famous for its cities, writing, and powerful kingdoms. The Mesopotamians believed the gods constantly influenced human life. A king's victory, a city's survival, a harvest's success, all depended on divine approval. But how could humans know what the gods wanted? The answer was divination, the attempt to discover hidden messages from the divine world. Mesopotamian priests studied many things: the stars, dreams, animal behavior, weather patterns, and even the organs of sacrificed animals. One of the most famous methods was called extispicy, the examination of an animal's internal organs, especially the liver. The liver was considered important because it was believed to contain signs from the gods. Priests carefully examined its shape, its marks, its unusual features. Every detail could have meaning. A strange formation could indicate danger. A perfect shape could suggest success. To modern eyes, this may seem mysterious, but for ancient people, it was a serious science. It required training, knowledge, experience. The diviner was not simply guessing. They were reading the universe as they understood it. The same idea appears in ancient Rome. Roman leaders depended heavily on signs before making important decisions, before battles, before political actions, before major events. They consulted religious specialists. The most famous were the augurs. Their job was to interpret signs from the sky, especially the behavior of birds, the flight patterns, the direction they moved, the sounds they made. All of these could carry meaning. A bird flying from one direction might be positive. Another direction might be a warning. The sky became a message board. The gods were believed to be communicating. But perhaps the most powerful form of divine communication was dreams. Dreams have fascinated humans forever. Every night, the mind creates entire worlds, places that feel real. People who no longer exist appear again. Impossible events happen. Ancient humans noticed this, and they asked, where do dreams come from? Are they just thoughts? Or are they messages? Many ancient cultures believed dreams connected humans with another reality. A person sleeping could receive information from gods or spirits. In ancient Egypt, dreams could be interpreted as signs. In Mesopotamia, kings recorded important dreams. In Greece, dream temples existed where people sought healing through sleep. The dreamer entered a sacred space. They waited for a message. They hoped a god would appear. And sometimes, they believed the dream provided guidance. This idea was powerful because dreams feel personal. A message in the sky can be ignored, but a dream feels like it comes from inside you. It feels intimate, direct, almost impossible to dismiss. Another fascinating form of divination involved the stars. Ancient civilizations carefully observed the heavens. They noticed patterns. They tracked planets. They recorded movements. Over time, they developed astrology, the belief that celestial movements influenced human events. The stars became connected with destiny. The universe above was connected to life below. This idea had enormous influence. Kings wanted to know the future. Armies wanted to know when to attack. Farmers wanted to know when to plant. Everyone wanted some control over uncertainty. And divination offered something humans have always wanted: a glimpse into what comes next. Because uncertainty is one of humanity's greatest fears. The future is invisible. We cannot see tomorrow. We cannot know what will happen. This creates anxiety. Religion often provides ways to face that uncertainty. Divination created the feeling that the future was not completely hidden. There were signs. There was a pattern. There was meaning. But there is also something deeper happening. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. Our brains are designed to find connections. This ability helped us survive. A movement in the grass could mean danger. A change in weather could mean preparation. Recognizing patterns kept humans alive. But this ability also means we sometimes find meaning where there may be none. A coincidence can feel like a message. A random event can feel connected. Ancient humans lived in a world full of uncertainty, so their minds searched for order. Divination was one way of creating order from chaos. But it was not only about predicting the future, it was also about making decisions. A king facing a difficult choice needed confidence. A community facing disaster needed hope. A ritual could provide certainty, even if the future remained unknown. The act itself created stability. And this reveals something important about religion. Religion was not only about explaining the universe, it was also about helping humans live inside the universe, giving structure, giving comfort, giving meaning. The search for signs also shaped the relationship between humans and gods. If the universe sent messages, then humans were not alone. The gods were watching. The spirits were aware. The world had intention. This belief transformed nature itself. Thunder was not just sound. A dream was not just imagination. A bird was not just an animal. Everything could carry hidden meaning. The entire world became a language humans tried to understand. And perhaps this is one of the oldest religious ideas ever created. The belief that reality has a deeper layer. That beneath ordinary events, there is something unseen, something waiting to be discovered. Thousands of years later, humans still search for signs. We look at the stars. We interpret dreams. We search for patterns. The methods have changed, but the desire remains. We want to understand. We want answers. We want to believe the universe is not random, that somewhere beyond what we can see, there is meaning. And maybe that search itself is one of the oldest parts of being human. The ancient priest studying a sign. The hunter reading the sky. The traveler following the stars. They were all asking the same question. Is the universe trying to tell us something? For thousands of years, humans have searched for places where the ordinary world ends and the sacred world begins. A mountain peak, a hidden cave, a river source, a field where something unusual happened. Certain locations seemed different. They felt powerful, mysterious, almost alive. And from this feeling came one of the most important ideas in the history of religion: the creation of sacred places. The belief that some locations are not just pieces of land. They are connections between humans and gods, between Earth and the unseen world. Before humans built massive temples, they already had sacred landscapes. Nature itself was the first sanctuary. A mountain rising above the land looked closer to the sky. A cave descending into the earth felt like a doorway. A river bringing life seemed touched by something greater. The natural world became a map of the spiritual world. One of the strongest examples of sacred landscapes is the mountain. Across countless cultures, mountains became homes of gods. Why? Because mountains are powerful symbols. They stand above everything else. They touch the clouds. They are difficult to reach. They create a feeling of distance from normal life. To ancient humans, climbing a mountain was not just a physical journey. It was a spiritual journey, a movement away from ordinary existence, a step toward the heavens. Ancient Greece had Mount Olympus. According to Greek mythology, the gods lived there. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo. The highest peak became the home of the highest beings. The mountain represented divine power. In Mesopotamia, people built artificial mountains, the ziggurats. These massive structures rose above cities. They were designed to connect earth and heaven. Humans created a mountain when nature did not provide one, a staircase between worlds. In Egypt, mountains and elevated places were also connected with the divine. The pyramids themselves reflected ideas about reaching the sky. The dead king was transformed into a being connected with the heavens. Architecture became a way to recreate the sacred landscape. But mountains were not the only sacred spaces. Caves held another kind of power. If mountains reached upward, caves went downward. They entered the hidden world beneath the earth. Many ancient cultures believed the underground was connected with ancestors, spirits, and the afterlife. The cave was mysterious, dark, unknown, a place where transformation could happen. A person entered the darkness and returned changed. This idea appears in myths around the world. Heroes enter caves. They face challenges. They discover knowledge. They encounter supernatural forces. The cave becomes a place of rebirth. Another important sacred location was water. Rivers, springs, and lakes became centers of spiritual activity. The reason was simple. Water meant life. Without water, civilizations disappeared. A river could feed thousands. It could create cities. It could allow agriculture. But water also had a dangerous side. Floods could destroy everything. A river was both life and destruction. Powerful, unpredictable, sacred. The ancient Egyptians built their civilization around the Nile. The river was not just geography. It was part of their religious worldview. Its yearly flooding brought fertile soil. The cycle of destruction and renewal became connected with divine forces. The Nile represented life itself. In India, rivers also became deeply sacred. Water was connected with purification, renewal, spiritual transformation. The idea that water could remove impurity appears in many traditions, because water itself has always represented change. A person enters. They are transformed. They emerge different. But perhaps the most fascinating sacred places are those created by humans. Temples, shrines, monuments. The moment humans built the first temples, something changed forever. Religion became permanent. A belief that once existed only in stories and rituals became a physical place. A temple was more than a building. It was a statement. A community saying, "This place matters. This connection matters. This relationship with the divine matters." Some of the oldest temples in the world are thousands of years old. And they reveal something extraordinary. Humans were willing to invest enormous effort into creating sacred spaces, even before modern technology, before machines, before advanced engineering. People carried stones, moved materials, organized communities, dedicated generations of work, all for places they believed were important. One of the greatest examples is Göbekli Tepe, an ancient site in modern-day Turkey, built thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids. The massive stone pillars show animals carved into the surface: predators, birds, wild creatures. The purpose of the site remains debated, but many researchers believe it had a ritual or ceremonial function. If true, this changes how we understand early religion, because it suggests that humans may have built sacred spaces before they built cities, before agriculture fully developed, before traditional civilization. Religion may have helped bring people together, not the other way around. The sacred place itself became a reason for communities to gather, to share rituals, to exchange ideas, to create identity. This may have been one of the first steps toward civilization, because a shared belief can unite people who would otherwise remain separate. Sacred places also created journeys. Pilgrimages. People traveled long distances to visit important locations. The journey itself became meaningful. The difficulty showed devotion. The distance showed commitment. The arrival created a powerful emotional experience. This tradition continues today in many religions. The desire to visit a place connected with something greater is deeply human. But why do certain places feel sacred? Is it because humans give them meaning? Or do some locations naturally create powerful experiences? A mountain can inspire awe. A vast desert can create a feeling of isolation. A forest can feel mysterious. A cave can create a sense of entering another world. The human mind reacts strongly to environments. Certain places naturally affect us. Ancient humans recognized this. They did not separate emotion from spirituality. A powerful feeling could be evidence of something sacred. And perhaps that is why sacred spaces became so important. They gave humans a way to experience the unknown. A place where questions felt closer to answers. A place where the invisible world felt almost reachable. From the first caves to the greatest temples, humans have always created bridges between earth and sky, between life and death, between the known and unknown. Sacred places are humanity's physical expression of curiosity. They are proof that humans have always searched for something beyond survival. We wanted more than food, more than shelter, more than existence. We wanted meaning. And maybe the oldest temples were not built to bring humans closer to gods. Maybe they were built because humans were trying to understand themselves. Standing beneath a giant mountain, inside a dark cave, beside a powerful river, or beneath a temple reaching toward the sky, humans looked around and asked the same ancient question. What is the hidden force behind this world? And that question may have created some of the most extraordinary places humanity has ever built. For thousands of years, humans have wondered about one of the strangest questions in existence. Why do we believe? Why do humans create gods, spirits, myths, and sacred traditions? Every civilization that has ever risen seems to have searched for something beyond the visible world. From ancient caves to enormous temples, from simple rituals around a fire to complex religious systems that shaped entire empires. The details changed. The names changed. The stories changed. But the search remained. And perhaps the answer is hidden not only in ancient ruins, but inside the human mind itself. Because religion may not have started with one civilization. It may have started with the way humans think. The human brain is one of the most powerful pattern-finding systems in nature. We look at the world and search for connections. A movement in the grass could mean danger. A change in the weather could mean preparation. A strange sound could mean an approaching threat. This ability helped humans survive, but it also created something else. The ability to see meaning, even in things we cannot fully understand. When ancient humans looked at the sky, they saw patterns. When they watched animals, they saw personalities. When they experienced death, they searched for what came next. The world was full of mysteries, and the human mind tried to explain them. This may have been one of the first steps toward religion. Imagine the world of an early human. There are no written explanations, no scientific instruments, no books describing how nature works. A storm arrives. Lightning tears across the sky. Thunder shakes the ground. The entire world seems to respond. To a person thousands of years ago, this may not have seemed like a random event. It may have seemed like an action. Something was happening for a reason. Someone was responsible. This way of thinking is called agency detection, the human tendency to assume there is an intentional force behind events. And from this idea, spirits and gods may have developed. But why would humans think this way? because believing there is a hidden force was sometimes useful. If you hear a noise in the forest, you have two possibilities. It could be the wind, or it could be a predator. A person who assumes there is danger might survive. A person who ignores the possibility might not. Our ancestors evolved to pay attention to possible threats. The brain became extremely sensitive to signs of intention. And this sensitivity may have influenced the birth of religion. But religion was not only about fear, it was also about connection. Humans are social creatures. We depend on groups. We create families, communities, cultures. Shared beliefs strengthen these connections. A group performing the same ritual becomes more united. A community sharing the same stories becomes stronger. Religion created a shared identity. It answered not only what controls the universe, but also who are we? Where do we belong? What values should guide us? This is why religion became such a powerful force in human societies. It was not just about gods. It was about humans. It shaped laws, traditions, morality, art, architecture, civilization itself. But there is another fascinating part of the human mind: our ability to imagine things that do not physically exist. A wolf exists. A mountain exists. A river exists. But a spirit, a god, a mythical creature? These require imagination. Humans can create ideas beyond direct experience. This ability is unique. We can imagine invisible worlds, future possibilities, alternative realities. This same imagination allowed humans to create tools, languages, and civilizations. The same mental ability that created technology also created mythology. The human mind can build worlds, and religion was one of humanity's earliest worlds. A world filled with meaning, symbols, stories, sacred beings. But religion also helped humans deal with one of the hardest realities: suffering. Life has always contained pain, disease, loss, death, natural disasters. Ancient humans experienced all of these without modern explanations. Religion offered ways to understand suffering. It suggested that events were not meaningless, that there was a larger story, a greater purpose. This does not mean every culture explained suffering the same way. They did not. Some saw suffering as a test, some as imbalance, some as part of a natural cycle. But the human desire to find meaning remained. This may explain why religious ideas survived for thousands of years. They answered emotional questions, not just intellectual ones. Humans do not only ask, "How does the world work?" We also ask, "Why does it matter?" That second question is where religion often begins. Another important aspect of religion is storytelling. Humans remember stories better than isolated information. A story about a god, a hero, a creation event, a great flood, a journey through the afterlife. These stories preserve ideas across generations. A child learns the stories. The child grows older. The child teaches others. A belief system survives. Storytelling became the vehicle that carried religion through history. And the more powerful the story, the longer it lasted. This is why ancient myths still fascinate us today. They reveal how humans understood themselves. They show what ancient people feared, what they valued, what they hoped for. But perhaps the most mysterious part of religion is that it appears everywhere. Separated cultures developed similar ideas. Flood myths, creation stories, afterlife beliefs, sacred mountains, sky gods, animal spirits. Why? One explanation is that humans share similar experiences. We all live under the same sky. We all experience birth and death. We all fear the unknown. We all search for meaning. So naturally, similar ideas emerge. Another possibility is that humans have a deep spiritual instinct, a natural tendency to look beyond the physical world, a desire to connect with something greater. Whether someone calls it a god, spirit, universe, or something else, the search itself appears to be universal. And maybe this is the most important discovery. The oldest religion may not have been a specific belief system. It may have been the human desire to understand. The first sacred question. The first moment someone looked at the stars and wondered. The first time someone buried the dead and asked where they went. The first time someone entered a dark cave and felt there was something beyond the visible. That moment may have been the true beginning, not of one religion, but of religion itself. Because before temples existed, before scriptures were written, before gods had names, there was one simple human thought: there must be something more. And that thought may be the oldest spiritual idea humanity has ever created. For as long as humans have existed, one mystery has followed us everywhere. What happens after death? It is perhaps the oldest question ever asked. Long before temples, long before written language, long before the names of gods appeared in history, humans were already looking at the dead and wondering, is this the end? Or does something continue? This question may have played one of the biggest roles in the birth of religion itself, because death is the one experience every human knows will come, but no living person can truly explain. Ancient humans faced death without the modern understanding we have today. They did not know about biology. They did not understand the processes inside the body. A person who was alive one moment could become completely still the next. The body remained, but something seemed missing. The voice disappeared. The movement stopped. The personality vanished. To ancient observers, it looked as if something had left. And this idea may have created one of humanity's earliest beliefs: the belief in a soul, a hidden essence inside every person, a force that could exist beyond the body. Some of the oldest evidence of possible spiritual thinking comes from burial practices. Early humans did not always simply abandon their dead. They often treated them carefully. They placed bodies in specific positions. They added objects. They covered them. They returned to burial locations. These actions suggest something important. The dead were not viewed as meaningless remains. They still mattered. They still had a connection with the living. One of the earliest examples comes from Neanderthal burials. For a long time, people imagined Neanderthals as primitive creatures with little culture. But discoveries have changed that view. Evidence suggests they cared for their dead. They created burial spaces. They may have placed flowers or objects with the deceased. The exact meaning remains debated. But the possibility is fascinating. Because if Neanderthals practiced intentional burial, then spiritual thinking may be far older than previously imagined. Perhaps the roots of religion do not begin with modern humans alone. Perhaps they reach deeper into our ancient relatives. Imagine standing beside a grave tens of thousands of years ago. A member of your group has died. Someone you knew. Someone who hunted with you. Someone who shared your life. You place them in the earth. But a question appears. Where did they go? The body is there, but the person you knew is gone. This gap between body and identity may have created the idea of an invisible self, a spirit, a soul, something beyond the physical. This belief appears across cultures. Different names, different stories, but a similar idea. The person is more than the body. In ancient Egypt, the afterlife became one of the most detailed religious systems ever created. The Egyptians believed death was not an ending. It was a transformation, a journey. The body was preserved through mummification because they believed the physical form remained important. The dead person needed their body for the next stage of existence. They built enormous tombs. They created burial goods. They wrote instructions for the journey. Death became a passage, not a disappearance. The Egyptians imagined a complex afterlife. The soul faced judgment. The heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, a symbol of truth and balance. If the person lived correctly, they could enter a peaceful afterlife, a place of renewal, a perfect continuation of existence. But if they failed, they faced destruction. This idea reveals something deeper. Religion was not only explaining death, it was also explaining morality. The afterlife became connected with behavior. How you lived mattered. Your actions had consequences beyond your lifetime. This idea became extremely influential in human history. But not every culture imagined the afterlife as a paradise. The ancient Mesopotamians had a much darker vision. Their underworld was not a place of reward. It was a shadowy existence, a world of dust and silence. Everyone went there. Kings, warriors, farmers, the rich and poor. Death created equality. But even in this bleak afterlife, the dead remained important. The living honored ancestors. They gave offerings. They performed rituals. Because the dead were still part of the community. They had not completely disappeared. This relationship between living and dead became one of the strongest foundations of ancient religion. Ancestors were not simply remembered. They were respected, sometimes even feared. In ancient China, ancestor worship became deeply connected with daily life. People believed their ancestors could influence the world. They could protect the family, provide guidance, or become angry if forgotten. Families maintained relationships with those who came before them. Death did not destroy the connection. It transformed it. This belief still influences many cultures today. The idea that ancestors remain connected with descendants is incredibly powerful. But why did humans develop these beliefs? One possibility is emotional. Humans form deep bonds. We love. We remember. We miss those who are gone. The mind struggles with complete disappearance. Someone important cannot simply become nothing. So humans create ways to maintain connection. Stories, rituals, memories, beliefs. The dead continue through meaning. Another possibility is that ancient humans noticed something unusual. Dreams. A person who died could appear again in dreams. They could speak. They could smile. They could seem alive. To ancient people, this may have felt like evidence. The dead still existed somewhere. The dream world became a doorway, a place where humans could reconnect with those they lost. This may explain why dreams became so important in many religions. They existed between worlds, between life and death, between reality and mystery. But perhaps the most fascinating thing about ancient burial practices is the effort involved. People spent enormous energy caring for the dead. They built monuments, created rituals, protected graves. They did this even when survival was difficult. Why? Because death was not just a biological event. It was a spiritual event. A moment filled with questions. A moment that demanded meaning. And maybe that is why death sits at the center of so many religions. Because it forces humans to confront the unknown. It reminds us that life is temporary. It creates the deepest mystery we know. What happens when we are gone? Thousands of years have passed. Civilizations have risen and disappeared. The names of ancient gods have faded. But the question remains. Every human generation faces it. Every culture creates answers. Some believe in worlds beyond this one. Some believe in rebirth. Some believe in spirits. Some believe consciousness ends, but the search itself is ancient. It may have started beside the first graves dug by human hands. A person standing in silence, looking at someone they loved, wondering where they went. And perhaps in that moment, one of humanity's oldest religious thoughts was born. The idea that something about us might continue, even after the final breath. For thousands of years, humans have looked upward, at the endless darkness above, at the countless lights scattered across the night sky. The stars were distant, silent, impossible to touch. Yet they became some of the most important symbols in the history of religion. Because long before humans built temples on earth, they were already searching for meaning in the heavens. The sky became the first great mystery, a place where gods were imagined to live, a place where destiny was believed to be written. And perhaps one of the oldest religious ideas in human history began with a simple question: what is happening above us? To ancient humans, the sky was unlike anything else. The earth changed constantly. Rivers moved. Animals wandered. Forests grew and disappeared. But the stars followed patterns. They returned again and again. The sun rose every morning. The moon changed its shape in a predictable cycle. The planets moved across the sky in strange paths. The heavens seemed organized, perfect, almost intentional. And this created a powerful idea. Maybe the universe itself had order, because something intelligent controlled it. The sky became a symbol of divine power. The sun especially became one of the most important objects in ancient religion. Every day it appeared. It brought warmth, light, life. Without the sun, crops failed. Animals suffered. Humans struggled. So many cultures connected the sun with a powerful god. In ancient Egypt, the sun was central to religion. The god Ra represented the sun's power. He traveled across the sky during the day. At night, he journeyed through the underworld. Each sunrise was a victory. Light defeating darkness. Life returning after death. The daily movement of the sun became a cosmic story. A story repeated every single day. The Egyptians were not alone. Across the world, civilizations looked at the sun and saw something sacred. The sun was not just a star. It was the force that made existence possible. In ancient Mesopotamia, the sun god Shamash represented justice and truth. Why? Because the sun sees everything. It shines everywhere. Nothing can hide from it. So the sun became connected with knowledge, with judgment, with order. The heavens were not only beautiful, they were powerful. The sky also influenced how humans understood time. Before clocks and calendars, humans watched nature. The moon became one of the earliest ways to measure cycles. Its changing phases helped people track months, seasons, important events. The moon was mysterious because it constantly transformed. It disappeared, then returned. It changed shape, but never truly vanished. This cycle became connected with ideas of death and rebirth. Many cultures saw the moon as a symbol of renewal, a reminder that endings could become beginnings. The stars also became guides. For travelers crossing deserts or oceans, the sky was a map. The stars helped humans navigate the unknown. They connected distant lands. They guided explorers. And because the stars were so reliable, people believed they carried deeper meaning. The constellations became stories. Groups of stars became heroes, animals, gods, creatures from ancient myths. The sky became a giant book written in light. Different civilizations read different stories, but everyone looked upward. One of the most fascinating developments from this connection between sky and religion was astrology, the belief that celestial movements influenced human events. Ancient people noticed that the sky changed before important events. They saw certain patterns. They recorded them. Eventually, some believed the positions of planets and stars could reveal the future. The heavens became connected with destiny. A king's success, a kingdom's survival, a war's outcome. All could supposedly be predicted by reading the sky. This gave enormous power to those who claimed to understand it. Astronomers and priests often became the same people. They studied the heavens, created calendars, predicted events, and interpreted divine messages. Knowledge of the sky became a form of religious authority. But the connection between heaven and religion goes even deeper. Many cultures imagined the universe as a layered structure. The human world below, the divine world above, the underworld beneath. The sky became the home of gods. Mountains connected earth and heaven. Temples were built to represent cosmic structures. Human beings lived between worlds. This idea appears in many ancient traditions. The gods lived above. The spirits lived below. Humans existed in the middle. And rituals created bridges between these realms. The belief in sky gods may be among the oldest religious ideas. Why? Because the sky dominates human experience. Everyone sees it. Everyone depends on it. Everyone wonders about it. The storm, the sun, the stars, the moon. They all seem greater than humanity. Ancient humans were surrounded by forces they could not control. The sky could provide life or destroy it. Rain could save crops. Storms could erase entire settlements. The heavens were both generous and terrifying. And this combination of wonder and fear often creates the sacred. But there is another mystery. Why do so many cultures place their gods in the sky? Could it be because humans naturally associate height with power? Things above us appear greater. Mountains are powerful because they rise above the land. The sky is the ultimate height, the highest place imaginable. So placing gods above humans made sense. The divine was higher, more distant, beyond ordinary reach. The heavens represented perfection. Another reason may be the feeling humans experience when looking at the stars. A clear night sky creates a powerful emotional reaction, a sense of smallness, a feeling of being part of something enormous. Modern science explains the universe. We know stars are distant suns. We know planets move according to physical laws, but the emotional experience remains. The night sky can still create awe, the same feeling ancient humans experienced thousands of years ago. And perhaps this feeling itself was one of the foundations of religion. Awe, wonder, the realization that humans are small compared to something much larger. The first person who looked at the stars may not have known what they were seeing, but they understood one thing. The universe was bigger than them, much bigger. And that realization may have been one of humanity's first spiritual experiences. From ancient temples aligned with the sun to stories written in the stars, humans have always searched upward. We looked for answers above. We imagined gods among the clouds. We believed the heavens contained secrets. And even today, when we explore space with advanced technology, we are still asking ancient questions. Where did everything come from? Why is the universe here? Are we alone? The sky remains the greatest mystery. The same endless darkness our ancestors stared into. The same stars they wondered about. The same universe that inspired the first myths. And maybe that is why the oldest religions began not on Earth, but by looking beyond it. For thousands of years, humans have searched for the beginning. Not just the beginning of civilization. Not just the beginning of kings, cities, or written history, but the beginning of everything. Where did the world come from? Where did humans come from? Why does anything exist at all? These questions may be among the oldest thoughts ever created by the human mind. And almost every ancient civilization developed its own answer. Creation stories became some of the most important parts of early religions. They were more than simple tales. They explained existence itself. They gave people a place in the universe. And they revealed what each culture believed about life, nature, and the forces beyond human control. Before there were temples, before there were scriptures, before there were organized religions, there were stories. Stories told around fires. Stories passed from one generation to another. Stories about the first sunrise, the first humans, the first gods, the first moment when chaos became order. Because to ancient people, the world was not just something that existed. It was something that needed an explanation. One of the oldest known creation traditions comes from ancient Mesopotamia, a land between two great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. Here, civilizations rose thousands of years ago. The Mesopotamians believed that in the beginning, there was chaos, a vast ocean of unknown forces. From this chaos came the first divine beings. The universe was not created from nothing. It was organized, separated, given structure. The famous Babylonian creation story, the Enuma Elish, tells of the struggle between ancient forces. The gods represented different aspects of existence: water, sky, earth, order. Conflict emerged. And from this conflict, the world was formed. The victory of the god Marduk over the chaos goddess Tiamat became a symbol of order defeating disorder. The universe was created through a cosmic battle. This idea appears in many ancient myths. The world begins with a struggle. Chaos must be defeated. The unknown must be controlled. And from this victory comes creation. Ancient Egypt had its own vision. The Egyptians imagined the beginning as a limitless ocean called Nun. From this endless water emerged the first land. A place of creation, a beginning. The god Atum appeared and created other gods. Together they formed the forces that shaped reality: the sky, the earth, the air, the moisture. The Egyptians believed their world existed because divine forces maintained balance. This idea was central to Egyptian religion. Ma'at, the principle of order, harmony, and truth. The universe was always threatened by chaos, and humans had a responsibility to preserve balance. Creation was not just a past event. It was an ongoing process. Every sunrise was a small recreation of the world. Every day, order defeated darkness again. The ancient Greeks also created powerful creation stories. Before the famous gods of Mount Olympus, there was chaos, a mysterious emptiness. From chaos came Gaia, the earth. Then other forces emerged: the sky, the seas, the titans. Eventually, the Olympian gods replaced the older divine generation. The Greek myths were filled with family struggles, generations of gods fighting for control. The universe itself became a story of power and change. In ancient China, creation stories also explained the relationship between humans and the cosmos. One famous story tells of Pangu, a giant being who existed inside a cosmic egg. When the egg opened, Pangu separated heaven and earth. He pushed them apart. For thousands of years, he held them in place. When he finally died, his body transformed into parts of the world. His breath became wind. His voice became thunder. His eyes became the sun and moon. His body became mountains and rivers. This story reveals an important idea. Humans were not separate from nature. The universe itself was connected. Everything came from one source. A similar connection appears in many indigenous traditions around the world. Creation is often not a single event. It is a relationship. Humans, animals, rivers, mountains, stars. Everything is connected. The world is alive with meaning. Another fascinating creation idea appears in Hindu traditions. Instead of one single beginning, many Hindu texts describe cycles of creation and destruction. The universe is born. It exists. It disappears. Then it begins again. Time is not a straight line. It is a cycle. Creation is endless. The universe constantly transforms. This idea is very different from traditions that imagine one beginning followed by one final ending. It shows how different cultures developed different ways to understand existence. But perhaps the most interesting part of creation myths is not how different they are. It is how similar they can be. Many cultures describe a world beginning from darkness or water. Many describe powerful beings creating order from chaos. Many include a separation between heaven and earth. Many include humans being created from something connected with the divine. Why do these similarities appear? One possibility is that humans share similar experiences. Every culture sees the same basic world: the sky above, the earth below, the waters around them, life and death, day and night. The human mind naturally creates stories around these realities. Another possibility is that creation myths reflect deeper human questions. We want to know where we belong. If the universe was created intentionally, then human existence has meaning. We are not just accidents. We are part of a larger story. This idea appears again and again throughout history. Humans searching for their place in existence. Creation stories also shaped morality. If the universe was created by powerful beings, then those beings often became the source of laws and values. The way humans should live became connected with the structure of creation itself. Religion became not only an explanation for the universe, it became a guide for life. The stories of creation were repeated in rituals, celebrations, temples, ceremonies. Each generation inherited the story. Each generation added new meaning. And this is why ancient creation myths survived for thousands of years. They were not only stories about the past, they were stories about humanity. They answered fears. They expressed hopes. They explained mysteries. And perhaps the greatest mystery remains the same today. Why is there something instead of nothing? Ancient humans looked at the world and asked this question. They looked at the stars, the oceans, the mountains, themselves, and they searched for an answer. The first religions may have begun with this search, a desire to understand existence, a desire to find meaning in the universe. From the oldest caves to the greatest temples, humans have always wondered about the same thing. Where did everything begin? And maybe the oldest religious story of all is not about a god. It is about humanity looking at the universe for the first time and asking why we are here. Imagine standing in the darkness of an ancient cave, thousands of years before pyramids, temples, or holy books existed. A small group of humans sits around a flickering fire. They have no written language, no kings, no cities, no idea that one day their descendants will build civilizations that stretch across continents. But tonight, something changes forever. They look into the flames, into the stars above them, and into the unknown. For the first time, they begin to wonder, is there something beyond what they can see? Is there a hidden force controlling the world around them? The storm, the animals, the seasons, life and death. And from this simple moment of curiosity, fear, and imagination, something is born that will shape humanity forever. Religion. But where did it truly begin? Was the first god born in the mind of a hunter staring at the night sky? Did the first prayers echo through an ancient cave long before humans knew how to write? Was it the Egyptians, The Mesopotamians? The Neanderthals? Or a civilization so ancient that its name has been completely forgotten? The truth is far stranger than most people imagine, because the first religion was not a temple. It was not a sacred book. It was not a powerful priest standing before a crowd. The earliest traces of religion were hidden deep in the behavior of our ancestors, inside their fears, their dreams, their rituals, and their desperate search for meaning in a dangerous world. Long before humanity created gods with names, humans already seemed to believe that something invisible surrounded them. Imagine the world of our ancient ancestors. There were no cities glowing at night, no roads, no medicine, no protection from the forces of nature. A single mistake could mean death. A failed hunt could mean starvation. A harsh winter could wipe out an entire group. Every day was a battle against an unpredictable universe. The sun disappeared every night. The moon changed its shape. Thunder exploded from the sky like the voice of an angry giant. Rivers could provide life one season and destroy everything the next. Animals were powerful, mysterious, and sometimes terrifying. To ancient humans, the world was alive. The mountains were not just mountains. The rivers were not just rivers. The animals were not just animals. Everything seemed to have a spirit. This idea, known as animism, may have been one of humanity's earliest forms of belief. The idea that nature itself contained unseen forces. A wolf was not only a predator, it could represent strength, danger, wisdom, or protection. A tree was not only wood, it could be a living connection between earth and sky. The line between the physical world and the spiritual world was beginning to disappear. And then, something even more mysterious happened. Humans began burying their dead. This might sound simple, but it changed everything. Many animals die and disappear, but humans started treating death differently. They placed bodies carefully into the earth. They sometimes added tools, food, decorations, and objects that seemed important. Why? Why would someone give a dead person items they could never use again? Why would a group spend valuable time and energy honoring someone who was no longer alive? One possibility is that early humans believed death was not the end. Maybe they imagined another world beyond this one, a place where the dead continued their journey. And if that was true, then humans had already crossed a major psychological boundary. They were no longer only surviving. They were imagining. The ability to imagine something unseen may be one of the most important moments in human history. A lion can understand danger. A bird can find shelter. A wolf can protect its pack. But humans could imagine invisible worlds. We could create stories about things that could not be touched. We could believe in forces beyond our immediate experience. We could look at the stars and ask questions. And those questions would eventually create gods. Deep inside prehistoric caves, another mystery appeared. Ancient humans began creating art, not just simple marks, not just practical drawings. They painted animals with incredible detail. They carved strange figures. They created symbols that still confuse scientists today. Some of the oldest cave paintings show animals that were essential for survival. Horses, bison, deer, and predators. But why paint them deep inside caves where almost nobody would see them? These were not ordinary places. They were dark, hidden, and difficult to reach. Some researchers believe these caves may have been sacred spaces, places where humans entered a different world, a place where they connected with spirits, a place where the boundary between reality and imagination became thinner. The cave itself may have been seen as something alive, a doorway into another realm. And then came one of the most fascinating discoveries in human history. The Lion Man. Deep inside a cave in Germany, archaeologists discovered a small statue carved from mammoth ivory. It was about 40,000 years old. It showed something impossible. A human body with the head of a lion, a creature that never existed in nature. But it existed in the human imagination. This was not simply a picture of an animal. It was something new. A being created from two different worlds, the physical world and the invisible world. Many researchers believe this may be one of the earliest signs that humans were thinking about supernatural beings. Not just animals, not just nature, something beyond. A god, a spirit, a protector, or perhaps something we cannot even name. And this raises one of the biggest questions in human history. Did religion begin because humans discovered something real? Or did religion begin because humans needed something to explain the unknown? When a hunter returned safely from a dangerous journey, did he thank a spirit? When rain arrived after a long drought, did people believe someone had answered their prayers? When someone died, did families believe their loved one had simply disappeared? Or did they imagine that another world waited beyond the darkness? These questions may have been asked thousands of years before the first civilization ever existed. The oldest religion in the world may not belong to Egypt. It may not belong to Mesopotamia. It may not belong to any empire we know, because the first religion may have existed inside the human mind itself. A spark of belief that appeared when our ancestors first looked at the universe and realized something terrifying. They were small. The world was enormous. And there were mysteries everywhere. The first gods may not have been carved into stone. They may have been born from fear, from wonder, from hope, from the human desire to believe that chaos had a hidden order. And once that idea entered the human imagination, it never left. Thousands of years later, humans would build giant temples reaching toward the heavens. They would create thousands of gods, write sacred texts, perform rituals, and tell stories that would survive for millennia. But the beginning was much simpler. A dark cave, a small fire, a group of humans staring into the unknown, and a question that would echo through history. What is out there? And perhaps even more importantly, who is listening? Before the first temples rose from the earth, before priests wore sacred robes, before kings claimed they ruled with the blessing of the gods, humans were already searching for something beyond themselves. But the mystery becomes even deeper when we travel further back into the forgotten world of prehistoric humanity. Because the earliest evidence of religion may not be found in written records or ancient cities. It may be hidden in the way our ancestors treated the dead. Thousands of years ago, in a world covered by ice, forests, and endless wilderness, early humans faced a question that no animal before them seemed capable of asking. What happens after we die? Death was everywhere. A failed hunt, a broken bone, a freezing night, a dangerous predator. Life could disappear in a moment. But instead of simply leaving their dead behind, humans began doing something extraordinary. They stopped. They gathered. They performed rituals. And this simple act may have been one of the first signs that humans were becoming something completely different from every other creature on Earth. Imagine a small group of prehistoric humans standing beside a grave. The person they loved is gone. Their body no longer moves. Their voice is silent. Yet the group does not treat them as an empty shell. They carefully place the body into the ground. Maybe they add tools. Maybe they add food. Maybe they decorate the body with red pigment known as ochre, a substance that appears again and again in ancient burials. Why? Why would people who had to fight every day for survival spend precious time on someone who could no longer help the group? The answer may reveal the birth of spirituality itself. They may have believed the person was still there in some form. Not visible, not physical, but present. A spirit, a soul, something that continued beyond death. This idea is so powerful that it appears in human societies again and again throughout history. Thousands of years later, Egyptians would build massive tombs for their dead. Mesopotamians would leave offerings for ancestors. Ancient Chinese civilizations would communicate with those who had passed away. The details changed, but the idea remained. The dead were not completely gone. They were somewhere else. And perhaps this belief began long before civilization itself. One of the most fascinating examples comes from ancient burial sites connected to Neanderthals. For a long time, many people imagined Neanderthals as primitive creatures, barely different from animals. But discoveries over the last century have challenged that idea. Neanderthals buried their dead. They cared for injured members of their groups. They may have used symbols. They may have even had their own forms of ritual. Deep inside caves, archaeologists discovered bodies placed in positions that looked deliberate, not random, not accidental, carefully arranged. Some burials included objects placed near the body. This suggests something important. Neanderthals may have understood death in a symbolic way. They may have wondered where a person goes when their body stops working. And if they did, then the roots of religion may reach back even further than modern humans. Perhaps the first spiritual questions were not asked by kings or philosophers. Perhaps they were asked by hunters sitting around a fire during the Ice Age. But death was not the only mystery that shaped early belief. The natural world itself was a source of endless questions. To ancient humans, nature was both beautiful and terrifying. The sun gave warmth but disappeared every night. The moon changed its shape. The stars moved across the sky in patterns that seemed impossible. The seasons came and went. Animals appeared and vanished. The world seemed to follow rules that nobody understood. And humans wanted answers. One of the oldest ideas that may have emerged was that everything had a hidden force behind it. The river had a spirit. The mountain had a spirit. The animal had a spirit. The storm had a spirit. This way of thinking created a world filled with invisible personalities. Nature was no longer just nature. It was a living network of forces. A hunter who killed a powerful animal might have believed he needed to respect its spirit. A group preparing for a journey might have performed rituals asking for protection. A community facing a harsh winter might have tried to communicate with the unseen powers controlling their survival. Religion was not separate from life. It was life. Every sunrise, every hunt, every birth, every death could have a spiritual meaning. And then came another major turning point. The human imagination became even more powerful. People started creating stories, not just stories about what happened, stories about why things happened. Why does the sun rise? Why does lightning strike? Why do animals behave the way they do? Why do humans dream? Dreams may have played a huge role in early religion. Imagine waking up after seeing someone who died years ago. In the dream, they were alive. They spoke. They walked. They were real. To a prehistoric person, this could have been overwhelming. Maybe dreams were not just dreams. Maybe they were journeys. Maybe the dead were visiting from another world. This could have strengthened the belief that there was something beyond the physical body. The dream world may have become one of the first places humans imagined the supernatural. And from this came another important figure, the shaman. The person believed to communicate with the spirit world. Although the exact origins of shamanism are impossible to prove, many ancient cultures developed similar traditions. A special person who entered altered states. A person who interpreted dreams. A person who claimed to understand invisible forces. The shaman may have been one of the earliest religious specialists. Not a priest in a temple, not a ruler, but someone in a small tribe who stood between the human world and the unknown. Through chanting, dancing, fasting, or rituals, they attempted to reach another reality. Whether these experiences were spiritual, psychological, or both, they became a powerful part of human culture. And this may explain something incredible. Why did humans all over the world begin developing religion? Different continents, different languages, different environments. Yet similar ideas appeared again and again. Spirits, ancestors, sacred animals, invisible forces, life after death. It is almost as if something inside the human mind naturally searches for meaning. Maybe religion was not invented by one civilization. Maybe it slowly emerged wherever humans began asking the same questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What happens when we disappear? And what is the force behind this strange universe we live in? The oldest religion may not have had a name. It may not have had temples. It may not have had holy books. But it had something much more powerful. A human mind looking into the darkness and refusing to believe that the darkness was empty. Because once humans imagined a world beyond the visible one. The gods were already beginning to take shape. Before the first written prayers, before the first temples touched the sky, and before humanity created thousands of named gods, there was a mysterious connection between humans and the animals that surrounded them. The earliest religions may not have started by looking upward toward the heavens. They may have started by looking into the eyes of the creatures standing beside us. For ancient humans, animals were not simply sources of food. They were powerful beings. They were hunters, rivals, teachers, and sometimes even protectors. A wolf could represent intelligence and teamwork. A bear could represent strength and danger. A bird flying above the earth could appear to possess a connection to the sky itself. And in the minds of prehistoric humans, animals may have existed somewhere between the physical and spiritual worlds. This idea would shape human belief for thousands of years. Long before the Egyptians worshipped cats, long before civilizations created animal-headed gods, and long before temples were filled with statues of sacred creatures, early humans were already forming relationships with the animal kingdom. But why? Why did animals become such a central part of the first religions? The answer may lie in survival. Imagine living 40,000 years ago. You wake up in a world where every animal matters. A deer could mean food for your family. A predator could mean death. A migration pattern could determine whether your group survives another winter. Animals controlled your fate. They were mysterious, powerful, and often more capable than humans. They could see in the darkness. They could run faster. They could sense danger before you. To early humans, animals possessed abilities that seemed almost supernatural. And perhaps they were. Not because they were magical, but because humans began to see them as symbols of forces greater than themselves. This is where one of the oldest religious ideas may have been born. The belief that humans and animals were connected. Not separate. Connected. A person could carry the spirit of an animal. An animal could guide humans. An animal could hold wisdom that humans needed. This idea appears in cultures across the world. The hunter who respected the animal he killed. The tribe that believed their ancestors came from animals. The warrior who wore animal skins to gain strength. The storyteller who passed down legends about humans transforming into creatures. These beliefs may seem strange today, but thousands of years ago they represented humanity's attempt to understand the world. And then something even more mysterious appeared. Cave art. Deep inside hidden chambers, far away from sunlight, ancient humans painted animals that were larger than life. They painted horses, bison, rhinoceroses, lions, animals that looked almost alive as the flames of a torch moved across the walls. But the biggest question remains: why paint them there? Why travel deep into dangerous caves where almost nobody would see the artwork? Some researchers believe these caves were not galleries. They were sacred spaces, places where humans believed they could communicate with another world. a world of spirits, a world beyond ordinary reality. The cave itself may have represented a journey. Entering the cave was like entering the unknown. The darkness could symbolize death. The inner chambers could represent another realm, and the paintings could have been a way of connecting with the forces that controlled life. Some of the most fascinating discoveries come from caves in Europe. One of them is the famous Chauvet Cave in France. Inside are paintings created more than 30,000 years ago. The artwork is breathtaking. The animals are drawn with movement and emotion. They almost seem alive. But among these animals, something unusual appears. Creatures that do not exist. Hybrid beings. A mixture of human and animal. This was not simple observation. This was imagination. And imagination may have been the doorway to religion. Because to create a being that does not exist in nature, humans had to think beyond the physical world. They had to imagine something unseen, something impossible, something supernatural. One of the most famous examples is the Lion Man statue. Carved from mammoth ivory around 40,000 years ago, this small figure shows a human body with the head of a lion. A creature that belongs to no known species. A creature born entirely from the human mind. Imagine the person who created it. They spent hundreds of hours carving a tiny figure with primitive tools. They did not make it randomly. They gave it meaning. The Lion Man may have represented a spirit, a guardian, a powerful ancestor, or perhaps a being from a world beyond humans. Whatever it meant, it reveals something extraordinary. Early humans were not only surviving, they were creating worlds. They were asking questions. They were imagining invisible realities. And that ability would completely transform our species. Because once humans believed there were forces beyond the physical world, they began looking for ways to communicate with those forces. And this is where ritual begins. Ritual is one of the most mysterious behaviors in human history. A ritual is not simply an action. It is an action filled with meaning. A repeated behavior that connects the physical world with the symbolic world. A hunter painting his body before a hunt. A group gathering around a fire. A person placing an object beside a dead relative. These actions may not have practical value, but they have emotional and spiritual value. They tell humans that they are part of something bigger, and fire itself may have played a massive role. For early humans, fire was almost magical. It gave warmth. It pushed away predators. It transformed raw food into something new, but it also moved. It danced. It changed shape. It disappeared and returned. Fire looked alive. Perhaps that is why so many ancient religions connected fire with the divine. The flames became a symbol of transformation, a bridge between worlds, a place where humans gathered and shared stories, and those stories became myths. The first gods may have begun as stories told around ancient fires, a story about the sun, a story about a powerful animal, a story about a spirit that controlled the storm. Generation after generation, these stories grew. The spirits became characters. The characters became gods. The gods became rulers of the universe. And thousands of years later, humans would build entire civilizations around them. But the origin was much simpler. A group of people sitting together in the darkness, trying to understand a world that was beautiful, dangerous, and mysterious. They looked at the animals around them. They looked at the sky above them. They looked into the fire in front of them. And they asked the question that would shape all of human history. Is there something more? Something hidden? Something watching? Something beyond what our eyes can see? And perhaps that question was the first prayer ever spoken. For thousands of years, humans have searched for the first moment when religion was born. But perhaps the answer was never buried inside a forgotten temple or written on an ancient tablet. Perhaps the first religion began somewhere much darker, inside the human mind. Because before humans created gods, they created something even more powerful. They created meaning. The ability to look at a random event and believe there was a hidden reason behind it may have been one of the greatest turning points in human evolution. A storm did not simply happen. A disease was not just bad luck. A successful hunt was not only skill. Something caused it. Something unseen. Something powerful. And from this idea, the first invisible forces began to emerge. Imagine a prehistoric hunter walking through a forest thousands of years ago. The wind suddenly changes. The trees begin moving. The sky becomes dark. A powerful storm arrives. The hunter has seen storms before, but this time feels different. The thunder sounds like a voice. The lightning looks like a weapon thrown from the sky. The storm seems angry. To the modern mind, we understand the science behind it. But to ancient humans, nature was a mystery. And when humans face mysteries, they search for patterns. They search for intention. They search for someone or something behind the event. This may be one of the deepest roots of religion. The belief that the universe is not random. That behind every event there is a force, a will, a presence. This idea would eventually lead to the creation of gods. But before gods had names, humans may have believed in something much simpler. Spirits. The world was filled with them. The spirit of the river, the spirit of the mountain, the spirit of the animal, the spirit of the ancestors. Every part of existence could contain a hidden energy. This belief system is often called animism, and many scholars believe it may represent one of humanity's earliest forms of religion. But animism was not just a belief. It was a way of seeing reality. Ancient humans did not separate nature from spirituality. The two were connected. A forest was not just a collection of trees. It was a living place. A mountain was not just rock. It was ancient and powerful. A river was not just water. It carried life, and perhaps even personality. This way of thinking created a world that was alive with invisible relationships. Humans were not rulers of nature. They were participants in it. Every action mattered. Every animal mattered. Every decision had consequences. And this belief may explain one of the strangest discoveries in prehistoric archaeology: the careful treatment of animal remains. In many ancient sites, researchers have found animal bones arranged in unusual ways, not simply discarded, placed, organized, sometimes decorated. This raises an important question. Were these only practical actions, or were they rituals? Did ancient humans believe the spirit of the animal needed respect? Did they believe the animal would return? Did they fear angering the invisible forces around them? We may never know for certain, but the pattern appears again and again. Humans did not just consume the world, they interacted with it. They built relationships with things they could not see. And then another mystery appears: the human fascination with the sky. The sky was perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Every day the sun crossed above the earth. Every night the stars appeared. The moon changed shape. The planets moved slowly through the darkness. To ancient humans, the heavens looked like a completely different realm, a place beyond reach, a world above the world. And naturally, humans wondered, who lives there? What controls the movement of the sun? Why does the moon disappear and return? Why do stars follow patterns? The sky became a place of power, and later civilizations would transform these ideas into some of their greatest gods. The sun gods of Egypt, the storm gods of Mesopotamia, the sky gods of ancient Greece. But the roots were much older. The first humans who stared upward were already asking the same questions. The heavens were mysterious, and mystery creates imagination. Another major step in the development of religion came through dreams. Dreams are one of the strangest experiences humans have. Every night, the mind creates worlds. We see places that do not exist. We speak with people who are far away. Sometimes we even see people who have died. For ancient humans, dreams may have been impossible to explain. A dead relative appears. They speak. They give warnings. They offer advice. Were they really gone? Or were they visiting from somewhere else? This idea may have strengthened belief in an afterlife. The dream world could have been seen as a doorway, a place where humans could communicate with spirits. And those who seemed especially connected to this world became important members of their communities. The first spiritual leaders may have been born from this. People who claimed they could enter the spirit world. People who interpreted dreams. People who performed rituals. People who became bridges between humans and the unseen. The earliest versions of priests and shamans may have existed long before temples. Not in grand buildings, but beside small fires, inside caves, among small groups fighting to survive. Their power came from knowledge, from stories, from their ability to explain the unknown. Because humans do not only need food and shelter, humans need answers. We need to understand why things happen. We need to believe our lives have meaning. And religion may have been humanity's first attempt to answer the biggest questions. Why are we alive? Why do we suffer? Why do we die? What happens after? These questions existed long before writing, long before civilization, long before anyone carved the first god into stone. And perhaps that is why religion appeared in so many different places, because humans everywhere shared the same fears, the same hopes, the same curiosity. A person living thousands of years ago in Africa, a person living in Europe during the Ice Age, a person living in ancient Asia. They all looked at the same mysterious universe. They all saw the same darkness. They all searched for the same hidden answers. The first religion was not created by one person. It was not invented by one civilization. It was a slow awakening, a moment when humans realized they could imagine something greater than themselves. Something invisible, something powerful, something beyond the physical world. And once that idea was born, humanity would never be the same again. For thousands of years, humans have built temples that reached the heavens, carved gods into stone, and created stories that shaped entire civilizations. But before any of that existed, there was another sacred place. A place far older than pyramids, far older than written words. A place hidden beneath the earth. The cave. Deep inside the darkness, early humans may have created the first spiritual spaces in history. Not because caves were comfortable homes, but because they felt different. They were mysterious. They were separated from the ordinary world above. When an ancient person entered a cave, they were not just walking into a hole in the ground. They were entering another world, a world of shadows, echoes, and unknown dangers. And perhaps this is where the first true religious experiences began. Imagine walking through a narrow passage with only a small flame lighting your way. The air is cold. The walls surround you. Every sound comes back as an echo. Your footsteps sound like someone following behind you. Your own voice seems like another voice answering. To an ancient human, this must have felt supernatural. The cave itself seemed alive. The darkness had a presence. The echoes had a voice. The walls held images of powerful animals. This was not an ordinary place. This was a place where humans could feel connected to something beyond themselves. One of the most fascinating discoveries in the search for the origins of religion comes from caves across Europe and the Middle East. Deep inside these ancient chambers, archaeologists have found paintings and carvings created tens of thousands of years ago, some of the oldest artworks ever discovered. But these were not random drawings. They were carefully placed, hidden deep underground, far away from daily life. And that raises a powerful question. Why would ancient humans create art in places where almost nobody would see it? If these paintings were only decoration, why hide them? Why travel through dangerous tunnels to reach them? Why spend hours, days, or even weeks creating them? The answer may be connected to belief. Some researchers believe these caves were among the first sacred spaces, places where humans performed rituals, places where they communicated with spirits, places where they believed the boundary between the human world and the invisible world became weaker. And the most mysterious part? Many of these paintings focused on animals. Animals that dominated the lives of prehistoric humans. Massive bison, powerful lions, fast horses, dangerous predators, creatures that could provide food or bring death. But the way humans painted them suggests something deeper. They were not just recording what they saw, they were giving these animals importance, meaning, power. Some animals were drawn with unusual features. Some were combined with human characteristics. Some seemed almost mythical. This was the birth of something completely new. The creation of beings that existed only in imagination. The first monsters. The first spirits. The first gods. One of the greatest examples of this ancient imagination is the famous Lion Man. Created around 40,000 years ago, this small sculpture was carved from mammoth ivory. At first glance, it looks impossible. It has the body of a human, but the head of a lion, a creature that never walked the earth, at least not in this form, but it existed inside the mind of its creator. And that may be the most important part. The Lion Man proves that ancient humans could imagine things beyond reality. They could create invisible worlds. They could think about beings that were not physically present. And this ability may be the foundation of religion itself. Because religion requires imagination. The ability to believe in something you cannot touch. Something you cannot see. Something that exists beyond ordinary experience. But what did the Lion Man represent? No one knows. Maybe it was a god. Maybe it was a guardian spirit. Maybe it represented a powerful animal ancestor. Or maybe it was a symbol of transformation. The idea that humans could connect with the power of animals. Many ancient cultures believed that humans and animals were connected. A hunter could gain the strength of a lion, the wisdom of a wolf, the speed of a bird. By wearing animal skins, masks, or performing rituals, humans may have believed they could cross the boundary between species. And this idea appears in religions thousands of years later. The gods of Egypt often had animal forms. The ancient Greeks told stories of humans and animals becoming connected. Many indigenous traditions around the world describe humans and animals as relatives. Perhaps these ideas began in the darkness of prehistoric caves. But caves were not only places of art, they were also places of sound. And sound may have played a much bigger role than we realize. Some ancient caves have unusual acoustic properties. A single voice can echo through the chambers. A chant can become louder. A simple sound can feel like it comes from everywhere. Imagine a group of humans gathered deep underground. The fire is burning. The walls are covered with strange animals. A spiritual leader begins chanting. The sound grows. The cave seems to answer. For people who believed the world was filled with invisible forces, this experience could have been overwhelming. It may have felt like communication with another realm. The cave was no longer just a cave. It became a bridge, a doorway, a place where humans could reach towards something greater. And this brings us to another mystery: the first religious leaders. Who were the people guiding these experiences? Who decided which rituals to perform? Who understood the meaning of the symbols? Perhaps there were early versions of shamans, individuals who were believed to have special connections with the spirit world. They may have used music, dancing, storytelling, and altered states of consciousness to enter what they believed was another reality. Whether these experiences were spiritual, psychological, or both, they were powerful. They brought communities together. They created shared beliefs. They gave people a sense of connection. And that may be one of the greatest reasons religion survived. It did something humans desperately needed. It turned fear into meaning. It transformed the unknown into a story. It gave humans a way to understand a world that was often terrifying. The first religions were not about rules. They were about questions. They were about mystery. They were about humanity looking into the darkness and believing there was something on the other side. And perhaps the oldest sacred place on earth was not a temple. It was not a pyramid. It was not a city. It was a quiet cave where the first humans entered the shadows, looked at the impossible images on the walls, and wondered if something was watching back. The first gods may have been born in the darkness of caves, but eventually humans carried those invisible forces into the world above. The spirits of animals became protectors. The forces of nature became powerful beings. The dead became ancestors. And slowly the unseen world began to take shape. But then something changed forever. Humans stopped wandering. They began to settle. They began building villages. They began growing food. And with the birth of civilization came a completely new chapter in the history of religion. Because when humans created cities, they did not just build homes. They built homes for the gods. Thousands of years after the first humans stared into the darkness and imagined invisible forces, one of the oldest known civilizations rose between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, Mesopotamia, the land that would become the birthplace of cities, writing, kings, and some of the first organized religions in human history. This was a world where gods were not distant ideas. They were everywhere. They controlled the weather. They controlled the harvest. They controlled the fate of entire kingdoms. To the people of Mesopotamia, the universe was a massive system that needed balance. And humans had a role to play. They were not the owners of the world. They were caretakers, servants of the divine order. The earliest Mesopotamian beliefs grew from the same ancient ideas that appeared thousands of years earlier. Nature had power. The unseen world mattered. Something beyond humans controlled the forces around them. But now those forces had names. They had personalities. They had stories. The spirits of the ancient world were becoming gods. One of the oldest known creation stories from Mesopotamia is called the Enuma Elish. It begins not with humans, not with land, not with light. It begins with water, a vast, endless ocean of chaos. Two great forces existed at the beginning: Apsu, the god of fresh water, and Tiamat, the goddess of salt water. Together, they represented the original forces of creation. From them came younger gods. But as the younger gods grew stronger, they became loud and disruptive. The older generation wanted silence. The younger generation wanted existence. And conflict began. Eventually, the god Ea defeated Apsu and took his place. But Tiamat, filled with anger and grief, created a powerful army of monsters to destroy the younger gods. The universe itself was at war. And then a new champion appeared, Marduk, the storm god, the warrior of the younger gods. In the great battle, Marduk defeated Tiamat. He split her body apart and used it to create the heavens and the earth, the sky above, the land below, order from chaos. And then, according to the myth, humans were created. But unlike many later religious traditions, humans were not created simply to live in paradise. They were created to serve, to maintain the world, to work for the gods. This belief shaped almost every part of Mesopotamian life. Farming was religious. Building was religious. Kingship was religious. Even daily routines were connected to the divine. A successful harvest meant the gods were pleased. A flood meant something had gone wrong. A disease could be a sign of divine anger. The world was constantly communicating. Humans just had to understand the message. And this created one of the most important roles in ancient society: the priest. The priest was not simply a religious teacher. The priest was a connection between humanity and the gods, because the gods were believed to live in temples. Massive structures called ziggurats rose above Mesopotamian cities. These stepped temple towers looked like mountains built by humans. And that was the point. They were bridges between earth and heaven, a way for humans to reach upward. At the top of these structures were sacred spaces where priests performed rituals. The gods were treated almost like royal guests. Their statues were dressed, cleaned, given food and drink. They were honored every day, because if the gods were unhappy, the entire city could suffer. Imagine living in a world where every event had a spiritual meaning. A storm was not just weather. A drought was not just climate. A strange dream was not just a dream. Everything could be a message. And humans became obsessed with understanding those messages. They studied the stars. They examined animal behavior. They interpreted dreams. They searched for signs. This desire to understand the hidden world led to some of the earliest forms of astrology and divination. People believed the universe had patterns, and if they could read those patterns, they could predict the future. But perhaps the most interesting part of Mesopotamian religion was the enormous number of gods. Thousands existed. Every city had its own special deity. There was Anu, the god of the sky; Enlil, the powerful god of wind and storms; Enki, the god of wisdom and creation; Inanna, goddess of love and war; and Marduk, who eventually became the chief god of Babylon. These gods were not perfect. They argued. They fought. They made mistakes. They had emotions. In many ways, they reflected humanity itself. The ancient gods were not completely separate from humans. They were larger versions of human fears, desires, and struggles. But what happened after death? What did Mesopotamians believe waited beyond life? Their answer was surprisingly dark. The underworld was not a paradise. It was not a place of reward or punishment. It was a shadowy existence where all souls eventually went. Rich or poor, king or farmer, everyone faced the same fate. This fear of death made ancestor rituals extremely important. The dead could not simply be forgotten. Families offered food and drinks to their ancestors. They believed the spirits of the dead remained connected to the living. If ignored, those spirits could return, not as peaceful memories, but as restless ghosts. The living and the dead existed together, two worlds connected by ritual, and this idea would appear in many civilizations that came after: Egypt, China, Greece, Rome. Different gods, different stories, but the same ancient human need: the need to believe that life has meaning, that death is not the end, that the universe is not random. Mesopotamia did not create the first human belief in the supernatural. That began thousands of years earlier. But Mesopotamia transformed those ancient instincts into something new: organized religion, temples, priests, written myths, a complete system explaining humanity's place in the universe. The first gods were whispers in the darkness, but now they had names. They had homes. They had kingdoms. And humanity had entered a new age, the age of the gods. Before Egypt built its giant pyramids, before Greece created stories of mighty Olympian gods, and before Rome spread its empire across continents, another ancient civilization was already searching for answers about life, death, and the mysteries of existence. Along the banks of the Nile River, a civilization would rise that transformed religion into one of the most powerful forces the ancient world had ever seen: ancient Egypt. For thousands of years, the Egyptians looked at the world around them and saw something sacred: the river that gave them life, the sun that crossed the sky every day, the animals that shared their land, the mysterious journey from life to death. Everything had meaning. Everything had a place. Everything was connected to a greater cosmic order. And at the center of Egyptian religion was one powerful idea: balance. The Egyptians called this balance Ma'at. Not just a goddess, not just a concept, a force that kept the entire universe together. According to Egyptian belief, before creation there was only chaos, a dark, endless ocean, a world without structure. And from this chaos came order. The gods brought shape to the universe. The sun rose. The land appeared. Life began. But chaos was never completely destroyed. It was always waiting. The job of humanity was to protect the balance, to keep Ma'at alive. This belief shaped everything the Egyptians did. A good life was not only about personal success, it was about maintaining harmony with the universe. Kings ruled because they were believed to protect this balance. Priests performed rituals because they helped preserve it. Ordinary people followed traditions because every action mattered. The world was a delicate system, and if humans failed, chaos could return. This fear of chaos appears in many ancient religions. The idea that the universe was created from disorder, that humans had a responsibility to keep it stable. A similar idea existed in Mesopotamia, and this connection raises a fascinating question. Did ancient civilizations develop these beliefs independently? Or were they remembering something much older, something from a time before written history, a forgotten spiritual tradition that disappeared thousands of years ago? No one knows. But the similarities are impossible to ignore. The Egyptians created one of the most complex religious systems ever known. Their gods were everywhere. Some looked human. Some looked like animals. Some were a combination of both. And these animal forms were not random. They represented the powers humans saw in nature. The falcon could represent the sky. The lion could represent strength. The crocodile could represent danger and power. The cat could represent protection and mystery. The Egyptians believed animals were not ordinary creatures. They were connected to divine forces. This is why animals became such an important part of Egyptian religion. The same connection between humans and animals that may have begun in prehistoric caves continued thousands of years later. But now, those ideas had become a complete mythology. One of the most famous Egyptian gods was Ra, the sun god. Every morning, Ra traveled across the sky. Every evening, he entered the underworld. Each night, he battled the forces of darkness. And every morning, he returned. The daily journey of the sun became a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. Because the Egyptians noticed something profound. Everything seemed to follow a cycle. The sun disappeared and returned. The river flooded and receded. Plants died and grew again. The seasons changed. Nature itself was constantly being reborn. And humans wanted to believe they were part of that cycle. This idea became central to Egyptian beliefs about death. Unlike many ancient cultures, Egyptians did not see death as the end. They saw it as a transition, a journey. The dead person continued into another existence. But reaching that existence required preparation. This is why Egyptians built some of the most famous tombs in human history. The pyramids. These massive structures were not just monuments. They were spiritual machines, designed to help the dead ruler travel into the next world. The body was preserved through mummification because the Egyptians believed the physical form remained important. The soul needed a connection to the body. The tomb was filled with objects, food, jewelry, tools, weapons, everything the person might need. Because the afterlife was not a simple disappearance. It was another world. And the most important moment came after death: the judgment. According to Egyptian belief, the dead entered a great hall where their heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. The heart represented the person's true nature, their actions, their choices, their morality. If the heart was heavy with wrongdoing, it would fail the test. The soul would be destroyed by a terrifying creature, a being that combined parts of different animals, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, a creature that existed only to consume the unworthy. But if the heart was balanced, the person could enter the paradise known as the Field of Reeds, a perfect version of life, a place of peace, a place where people could be reunited with loved ones. The Egyptian idea of paradise was not completely different from Earth. It was a better version of the world they already knew, a world with endless food, peace, family, and happiness. This tells us something important about ancient religion. People often created afterlives based on what they valued most. For Egyptians, the perfect existence was a peaceful continuation of life. But Egyptian religion was not only about death. It controlled daily existence. People prayed. They performed rituals. They gave offerings. They celebrated festivals. The gods were not distant. They were part of everyday reality. A person could wake up in the morning, thank the sun, honor the gods, work, eat, and sleep. All of it was connected. Religion was not a separate activity. It was the foundation of society. And perhaps one of the most fascinating things about Egyptian religion is how long it survived. Thousands of years, dynasty after dynasty, king after king. The names changed, the temples changed, but the core ideas remained: order, balance, life after death, the connection between humans and the divine. The Egyptians took ancient human questions and turned them into one of the greatest religious systems the world has ever seen. But their story also reveals something deeper. The first humans who looked at animals and stars were searching for the same answers. The Egyptians were simply continuing a journey that began in the darkness of prehistoric caves. A journey that started with one question: what exists beyond what we can see? And thousands of years later, humans were still asking the same thing. Because the oldest mystery in history is not only where the gods came from, it is why humans needed them in the first place. For thousands of years, the ancient world was filled with gods. Gods of the sky, gods of the oceans, gods of war, gods of death, gods of harvest. Every civilization seemed to create its own explanation for the mysteries of existence. But one ancient culture followed a different path. Instead of focusing only on powerful gods controlling the universe, they looked deeper. They looked inward. They searched for the connection between the individual, the universe, and the endless cycle of existence. This was the beginning of one of the oldest living religious traditions on Earth: the ancient roots of Hinduism. Unlike many religions, Hinduism does not have a single founder. There is no one person who started it, no single moment when it suddenly appeared. Instead, it developed slowly over thousands of years, like a river collecting water from countless streams. Ancient traditions, philosophical ideas, ritual practices, stories passed from generation to generation, all combined into something that would become one of humanity's most enduring belief systems. To understand where Hinduism began, we must travel back thousands of years to the Indian subcontinent, a world of ancient cities, mysterious cultures, and spiritual questions. Long before modern India existed, early civilizations were already creating symbols and rituals. Among the oldest known civilizations in this region was the Indus Valley Civilization, a sophisticated society that flourished thousands of years ago. They built planned cities, created advanced systems, developed trade networks. But their beliefs remain one of history's greatest mysteries. They left behind symbols and objects. But because their writing system has not been fully understood, we still do not know exactly what they believed. Some artifacts suggest connections with later Hindu traditions, images of animals, meditative figures, possible sacred symbols. But the true meaning remains hidden. And that mystery makes the origins of Hinduism even more fascinating. Because religion often does not begin with a clear starting point. It evolves. It changes. It absorbs ideas. And somewhere in this ancient world, a new spiritual tradition was forming. The Vedic tradition. Around thousands of years ago, sacred hymns began to be composed in an ancient language known as Sanskrit. These texts became the foundation of early Hindu religious thought. They were called the Vedas, and they were not just books. They were collections of sacred knowledge. For generations, they were memorized and passed down orally, before they were ever written. This is one of the most remarkable achievements in human history. People preserved thousands of lines of poetry and ritual instructions purely through memory. The Vedas described a universe filled with powerful forces, not unlike Mesopotamia or Egypt. The world was alive with divine beings. The sun, the fire, the wind, the storms. Each force had a personality. Each had a role. One of the most important gods was Agni, the god of fire. Fire was sacred because it connected humans with the divine. When people performed rituals, they offered gifts into the flames. The fire carried those offerings upward. It became a bridge between earth and the gods. This idea is incredibly ancient. The same fire that surrounded prehistoric humans in caves later became a sacred connection to the divine. Thousands of years separated them. But the symbolism remained. Fire was transformation. Fire was communication. Fire was life. Another important figure was Indra, a powerful warrior god associated with storms and victory. Indra represented strength. He battled enemies of order. He defeated forces of chaos. Again, the same theme appears. Order against chaos. A universe that must be protected. A world that needs balance. But as Hindu thought developed, something changed. The focus slowly moved away from only worshiping external gods. People began asking deeper questions. What is reality? What is the self? What is the universe made of? What is the true nature of existence? These questions became central in a group of texts known as the Upanishads. And this was a major turning point. The Upanishads explored ideas far beyond simple rituals. They introduced concepts that would shape Hindu philosophy for thousands of years. One of the most important ideas was the relationship between Atman and Brahman. Atman represented the inner self, the deepest essence of a person. Brahman represented the ultimate reality, the force behind everything, the universe itself. The idea was revolutionary. What if the individual and the universe were connected? What if the same force that created the cosmos also existed within every person? This changed the way humans thought about spirituality. The gods were no longer only outside. The divine could also be found within. Another major idea was reincarnation, the belief that life continues through many births. A person does not simply live once and disappear. They return, again and again. This cycle became known as samsara, and the goal was not endless rebirth. The goal was liberation, a state known as moksha, freedom from the cycle, a final understanding of reality. This was a completely different vision of existence. Instead of focusing only on pleasing gods or gaining rewards after death, humans were searching for wisdom, understanding, a deeper connection with the universe. But Hinduism continued to evolve. Over time, new traditions developed. New gods became central. Among the most important were Shiva and Vishnu. Shiva became associated with destruction and transformation, not destruction as pure evil, but destruction as part of the natural cycle. Old things must end, so new things can begin. Vishnu became associated with preservation, maintaining balance in the universe. And the goddess traditions became equally important. The divine feminine appeared in many forms: powerful, creative, protective. This shows another unique feature of Hinduism. The divine was not limited to one form. The universe could be understood through many different expressions, many paths, many traditions, many ways of searching for truth. But perhaps one of the most complex and controversial parts of ancient Hindu society was the caste system. Over time, society became organized into different social groups. These divisions became deeply connected with religious ideas. The system created a hierarchy that shaped people's lives for centuries. While interpretations and practices changed across time and regions, the caste system became one of the most debated aspects of Hindu history. It shows how religion and society often become connected. Beliefs influence cultures, and cultures influence beliefs. But despite all changes, one thing remained: the search for meaning. Hinduism continued because it addressed questions humans have asked since the beginning. What is the universe? What is consciousness? What happens after death? Are we separate from the world? Or are we part of something greater? The ancient humans who stared into the fire thousands of years ago were asking similar questions. The Hindus of ancient India simply developed new ways to explore them. And that is what makes the history of religion so fascinating. Different civilizations, different gods, different stories, but the same human curiosity. The desire to understand the invisible force behind existence. The search for something beyond ourselves. The same search that began in darkness, around a small prehistoric fire, under the endless sky. Long before the rise of famous empires, before written history recorded the names of kings and gods, humans were already searching for a connection with the unseen world. They looked at the mountains and wondered if something lived above them. They looked at the rivers and wondered if something controlled their power. They looked at the stars and wondered if they were watching over them. And in one of the most mysterious corners of the ancient world, a civilization developed a spiritual tradition unlike anything else. A religion built around nature, ancestors, spirits, and the invisible energy believed to flow through all things. This was ancient Chinese religion, a world where gods were important, but ancestors were just as powerful. A world where the past was never truly gone, because the dead were still part of the family, still part of society, still part of the decisions of the living. The earliest recorded Chinese civilization was the Shang dynasty, a powerful kingdom that existed more than 3,000 years ago. And while many ancient cultures left behind temples and statues of their gods, the Shang left behind something different. Oracle bones, small pieces of animal bone and turtle shell covered with ancient writing. These objects may look simple, but they reveal one of the oldest recorded forms of communication between humans and the spiritual world. The people of the Shang dynasty believed the universe was filled with forces that influenced everything: weather, war, harvests, health, the future itself. And when they needed answers, they did not simply guess. They asked. They asked the spirits. They asked the ancestors. They asked the divine. The process was fascinating. A question was carved onto an oracle bone. Then heat was applied until cracks appeared. Those cracks were interpreted as messages. Imagine standing thousands of years ago, holding a piece of bone with a question written on it. A question about whether your army would win, whether your crops would grow, whether a child would survive, and believing the answer was hidden inside the patterns of the cracks. To modern eyes, it may seem mysterious, but to ancient people, this was a direct conversation with forces beyond human understanding. And perhaps the most important part of Shang religion was ancestor worship. Unlike some cultures that focused mainly on gods in the sky, the Chinese believed their ancestors remained active after death. The dead were not simply gone. They became part of the spiritual world. A grandfather who had passed away could still influence the family. A former king could still guide the kingdom. The connection between generations never ended. This idea became one of the strongest foundations of Chinese culture. Respect for ancestors. Honor for the past. The belief that those who came before you still mattered. In Shang society, the king had a special role. He was not only a political ruler, he was a religious figure, a bridge between humans and the spiritual realm. The king communicated with the highest forces of existence. One of the most important beings was Shangdi, the supreme power, the highest divine authority. Not exactly like the gods of Greece or Mesopotamia, Shangdi was less like a human-like ruler sitting on a throne, and more like a powerful force controlling the order of the universe. The king claimed his authority came from Shangdi. His rule was connected to the divine, but this idea would transform over time. As Chinese civilization developed, a new concept emerged: the mandate of heaven. The idea that rulers governed because heaven allowed them to. But if a ruler became cruel, corrupt, or failed to maintain harmony, heaven could remove that support. A dynasty could fall. A new ruler could rise. This created one of the most influential political and religious ideas in Chinese history: the connection between morality and power. A king was not only judged by humans, he was judged by the universe itself. This belief shaped China for thousands of years. The ancient Chinese did not see nature as something separate from humanity. The universe was a living system. Everything was connected: the sky, the earth, the seasons, human actions, all parts of one great balance. This idea would later develop into concepts like harmony and the relationship between opposing forces. The belief that reality was not random, that everything existed within a greater pattern. But Shang religion was not only about kings and ancestors. Ordinary people also practiced rituals. They honored family members who had died. They made offerings. They performed ceremonies. They believed respect for ancestors protected the family. A person's identity was not only their own. They were part of a chain stretching backward and forward through time. The living carried the legacy of the dead, and they had a responsibility to future generations. This idea is still visible in many Chinese traditions today. The importance of family, the respect for elders, the memory of ancestors. Ancient beliefs often survive in ways people do not expect. A religion can change. A civilization can transform. But certain ideas remain. And ancient China was not only a land of ancestor spirits. It was also a place where stories of powerful gods developed. Later Chinese traditions introduced many divine beings, gods of nature, immortals, spiritual beings, heroes who became legendary. The line between history and mythology became blurred. A great warrior could become a symbol of protection. A wise leader could become almost divine. A natural force could become a spiritual personality. This shows another pattern that appears throughout human history. Humans often transform what they admire into something sacred. The powerful become gods. The mysterious becomes spiritual. The unknown becomes mythology. But perhaps the most fascinating part of ancient Chinese religion is the idea that humans were not fighting against the universe. They were trying to live in harmony with it. Unlike some traditions that saw humans as separate from nature, Chinese thought often emphasized connection. A person's actions affected the world around them. A ruler's behavior affected the kingdom. A family's actions affected future generations. Everything was connected. A single mistake could disturb the balance. A single act of wisdom could restore it. And this brings us back to the oldest question. Where did religion begin? Was it in caves? Around fires? In the first cities? With the first gods? Or was it something that appeared naturally when humans realized they were part of something much larger? Ancient China gives us an important clue. Religion may not have started with gods. Maybe it started with relationships. The relationship between humans and nature. The relationship between the living and the dead. The relationship between one generation and the next. Before humans built temples to the heavens, they remembered the people who came before them. Before they worshipped distant gods, they honored their own ancestors. Because perhaps the first sacred thing humans ever discovered was not in the sky. It was the connection between each other. Before the rise of Greece, before the power of Rome, before the great temples of the ancient world became monuments of stone and gold, there was a mysterious civilization hidden on an island in the middle of the Mediterranean. A civilization that worshipped powerful female figures. A civilization that built enormous palaces. A civilization that performed rituals involving one of the most respected and feared animals in the ancient world, the bull. This was the world of the Minoans, and their religion remains one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient past. Because unlike the Egyptians or Mesopotamians, the Minoans left behind no clear religious books, no sacred scriptures, no complete list of gods, no explanation of their rituals. Instead, they left behind something much stranger. Images, symbols, paintings, statues, and questions. Thousands of years later, historians and archaeologists are still trying to understand what these ancient people truly believed. The Minoan civilization flourished on the island of Crete around 4,000 years ago. They built impressive cities. They created massive palace complexes. They developed art, trade, and architecture that influenced the civilizations that came after them. The most famous of these sites was the Palace of Knossos, a huge complex filled with colorful paintings and mysterious rooms. Later, Greek legends would connect this place with the story of the Minotaur, a creature that was half human and half bull, a monster trapped inside a giant labyrinth. For centuries, people believed this was only a myth, a fantasy. But then archaeologists uncovered the remains of the Minoan world, and suddenly the old stories seemed to contain echoes of something real. Not the Minotaur itself, but the importance of bulls. Because the bull was everywhere in Minoan culture. Painted on walls, carved into objects, used in rituals. The bull was not simply an animal. It was a symbol of power, strength, fertility, and perhaps something divine. One of the most famous Minoan images shows a ritual known as bull leaping. In this scene, a person appears to grab the horns of a charging bull and jump over its back. It looks dangerous, almost impossible. A mixture of athletic performance and religious ceremony. But what did it mean? Was it a test of courage? A ritual connected to fertility? A symbolic battle between humans and nature? Or a way to honor a powerful spiritual force? The truth is, nobody knows for certain. And that mystery makes it even more fascinating. Because religion in the ancient world was often not about explaining everything. It was about experiencing something. The feeling of standing before something powerful. Something larger than yourself. The Minoans seem to have understood this deeply. Their sacred places were often dramatic. Mountain peaks, dark caves, hidden chambers, places where the natural world itself became part of the religious experience. They did not separate nature from spirituality. A mountain was not just a mountain. A cave was not just a cave. These places could be entrances to another reality, a connection between humans and the divine. This idea appears in many ancient religions. Humans have always been fascinated by places that feel different, places that seem powerful. A dark cave, a towering mountain, a flowing river, a giant tree. Long before temples existed, nature itself was the first temple, and the Minoans continued this ancient tradition. One of the biggest mysteries of Minoan religion is the role of women. Many of the religious figures discovered by archaeologists appear to be female. The most famous is a figure often called the Great Goddess, a powerful female deity connected with nature and animals. She appears holding snakes, standing on mountains, surrounded by symbols of life and power. Some researchers believe this suggests that women held a very important religious role in Minoan society. Female priestesses may have conducted ceremonies. Women may have represented divine authority. The Minoan world may have been different from many later societies dominated by male gods and rulers. But without written records, we can only study the evidence they left behind. And the evidence creates more questions, not fewer. The Minoans also had sacred caves, deep underground spaces that may have been used for rituals. To ancient humans, caves had always carried a powerful meaning. They were places of darkness, but also places of birth. A cave could feel like the womb of the earth, a place where transformation happened. A person could enter one world and symbolically return changed. This connection between caves and spiritual experiences goes back thousands of years. The same darkness where prehistoric humans may have created some of the first rituals continued to attract later civilizations. The Minoans were also connected to the sea. Living on an island, they depended on the ocean. The sea provided food, trade, travel, but it also represented danger, storms, unknown depths. For ancient people, the ocean was mysterious, and mystery often becomes sacred. The Minoans likely had spiritual beliefs connected to the sea and the forces that controlled it. Because when humans cannot control something, they often try to understand it through stories and rituals. The gods become explanations for the unpredictable. The storm becomes the anger of a deity. The harvest becomes a blessing. The flood becomes a warning. The ancient world was filled with these connections. But perhaps the greatest mystery of Minoan religion is why it disappeared. Around the 2nd millennium BC, the Minoan civilization began to decline. A massive volcanic eruption occurred on the nearby island of Thera, one of the most powerful eruptions in ancient history. The explosion caused earthquakes. Ash covered the region. The effects may have damaged Minoan society. Later, the Mycenaean Greeks gained influence over Crete. Eventually, the Minoan world faded. Their palaces fell silent. Their rituals ended. Their gods disappeared. But their influence survived. Many ideas from Minoan culture may have shaped later Greek mythology. The stories of Zeus, the labyrinth, the Minotaur. The powerful gods of later Greece may contain memories of a much older world, a world where mountains, animals, and nature itself were sacred. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating patterns in the history of religion. Religions do not simply appear and vanish. They transform. Old beliefs become new stories. Ancient gods become legends. Forgotten rituals become myths. The Minoans remind us that human spirituality existed in many forms. Not every religion needed a holy book. Not every god needed a written name. Sometimes a civilization leaves behind only images, and those images are enough to show one important truth. Thousands of years ago, humans were already searching for meaning. They were already looking at the world and asking the same questions we ask today. Why are we here? What controls the forces around us? What happens after death? Is there something beyond what we can see? The Minoans answered those questions through bulls, mountains, caves, and mysterious gods. Their world disappeared, but the questions remained. And those questions continued to shape the next great religions of human history. For thousands of years, humans looked at the world around them and searched for signs of something greater. They watched the stars move across the sky. They watched animals migrate. They watched the seasons change. They watched life appear and disappear. And slowly, they began to believe that behind all of these mysteries was something unseen. A force, a spirit, a power. But religion was not only created in temples and palaces. Sometimes it appeared in the darkest places on earth. Inside caves, far away from cities, far away from kings. Long before organized civilizations existed, humans were already creating symbols that may have represented their earliest ideas about the supernatural. And one discovery in particular changed everything we thought we knew about the beginning of religion. Deep inside a cave in Germany, hidden for tens of thousands of years, archaeologists discovered a strange object. A figure unlike anything humans had ever seen before. A creature with the body of a human, and the head of a lion. The Lion Man, a small sculpture carved from mammoth ivory. Only about 30 centimeters tall, but its meaning may be enormous, because this strange figure may be one of the oldest known examples of human imagination creating something beyond the natural world. A being that did not exist. A creature from another reality. A possible god. The Lion Man was discovered in the Hohenstein-Stadel cave in Germany. The cave itself dates back to the Ice Age, a time when humans lived in a world of extreme cold, dangerous animals, and constant survival. This was not a world of cities. There were no pyramids, no temples, no written prayers, only small groups of humans trying to survive. But inside that harsh world, someone sat down and spent hundreds of hours carving a mysterious figure, using simple stone tools, slowly shaping mammoth ivory, creating something that existed only in the mind. And that may be the most important part. The Lion Man was not simply an object. It was an idea. The person who created it imagined something that could not be seen. A human mixed with an animal. A being between worlds. A creature that belonged neither completely to nature nor completely to humanity. This ability to imagine invisible realities may have been one of the greatest turning points in human history. Because once humans could imagine things that did not physically exist, a whole new world opened. Spirits, gods, myths, stories, religions, all became possible. But why create a figure like this? What was the purpose of the Lion Man? Was it a god? A spirit? A protector? A symbol used by a shaman? Or maybe something completely different? The truth is, We cannot know for certain. And that uncertainty is what makes it fascinating. Archaeologists study clues, the way the object was made, where it was found, other objects nearby. And the evidence suggests it was not an ordinary decoration. The cave contained other unusual items: animal teeth with holes, bones, tools, objects that may have been connected to rituals. This suggests the cave was not just a place to live. It may have been a sacred space, a place where humans entered another state of mind, a place where stories were told, where traditions were created, where the invisible world became real. And perhaps the Lion Man was part of that world. Imagine the scene. Thousands of years ago, a group of Ice Age humans sitting around a fire, the darkness of the cave surrounding them, the flames moving across the walls, and someone holding this strange figure. A story begins. Maybe the Lion Man was not just an object. Maybe it was a character, a powerful being from a world beyond humans, a protector, a creator, a warning, a symbol of the mysteries around them. The oldest religions may not have started with written beliefs. They may have started with stories. Humans are storytellers. We explain the unknown through imagination. When we see something powerful, we create meaning. When we face danger, we search for protection. When we experience death, we wonder if something continues. The Lion Man may represent that moment when humans first crossed a psychological boundary. The moment when we stopped only reacting to the world and started creating new worlds inside our minds. But the Lion Man is not the only evidence of ancient spiritual thinking. Across the world, researchers have discovered other signs of early symbolic behavior: cave paintings, burial rituals, carved objects. These discoveries suggest that prehistoric humans were not only surviving, they were thinking, they were questioning, they were searching for meaning. One of the strongest clues is the way ancient humans treated their dead. Many prehistoric groups buried their loved ones carefully, sometimes with objects, sometimes with decorations, sometimes in special positions. This suggests they may have believed death was not simply the end. The body stopped moving, but maybe something remained: a spirit, a presence, a connection. This belief appears again and again throughout human history. From prehistoric caves to the greatest civilizations, different cultures created different explanations. But the question was always the same: what happens after we die? The Lion Man may represent one of humanity's first attempts to answer another question. What exists beyond the visible world? A human with the mind of an animal with the spirit of a human, a being between worlds. Perhaps that was the perfect symbol for early religion, because religion itself exists between worlds, between the known and the unknown, between reality and imagination, between human life and something greater. But the story becomes even more mysterious, because the Lion Man was not the oldest evidence of symbolic belief forever. New discoveries continued to push the timeline further back. In Indonesia, scientists discovered cave paintings showing figures that appear to combine humans and animals. Images created more than 50,000 years ago, even older than the Lion Man. These discoveries suggest that the ability to imagine supernatural beings may have appeared earlier than we ever expected. Maybe religion did not begin in one place. Maybe it appeared in many places. When humans reached the same level of imagination, when their minds became capable of asking the same impossible questions. Who are we? Why do we exist? What is beyond the world we see? And once those questions entered the human